homebuyers who discovered a secret room or passage after moving in. What was inside? So I bought my first house back in 2017 after saving for like 5 years. It was this cute 1940s craftsman in a decent neighborhood. My parents helped with the down payment, forever grateful, and I was so excited to finally stop throwing money away on rent. The previous owners were this older couple who'd lived there since the 80s. They seemed normal enough during the sale. The husband, Timothy, was kind of quiet, but his wife, Caroline, was super sweet and kept apologizing for the state of things, even though the house was actually pretty well maintained. I remember thinking that was weird, but whatever. So I moved in and started doing some minor renovations, painting, replacing some old light fixtures, etc. Everything was totally normal for the first 3 months, until I decided to replace this ugly built-in bookcase in the dining room. It was this heavy, dark wood thing that made the whole room feel smaller and darker than it needed to be. When I was removing it, with help from my friend Brenda, who's legit the only person I know who understands power tools, we noticed something odd about the wall behind it. There was this thin gap between the bookcase and the wall that seemed off, like the bookcase wasn't flush against the wall the way it should be. We pulled harder and OMG, the entire bookcase swung out like a door, and behind it was this narrow passage that led to a small room about 6 x 8 feet. The passage was super tight. I'm pretty small, 5'2", and even I had to turn sideways to get through. Brenda was freaking out saying this was some horror movie shit and refused to go in first LMAO. I grabbed my phone for light and squeezed through. The room was completely empty except for this weird smell. Not like mold or anything gross, more like old perfume. There was a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling with a pull string, but I was too scared to try it in case it electrocuted me or something. The walls were covered in this faded floral wallpaper that looked way older than the rest of the house. And there were these tiny pencil marks on one wall at different heights. You know, like when parents mark their kids' growth? But these went from really low, like toddler height, all the way up to adult height. No names, just dates next to each mark going back to the 1950s. I was getting serious chills, but also feeling like I discovered some amazing secret. Like I couldn't decide if this was cool or terrifying. The room had no windows, but there was a small vent high up on one wall. I took pictures of everything and sent them to my parents. My dad was like, check for loose floorboards. He watches too many movies, LOL, so I did. Nothing there. But when I was tapping around the walls, I heard a hollow spot. I pressed on it, and a small panel popped open, revealing a cubby hole. Inside was a wooden box about the size of a shoebox. I'm not gonna lie. I literally backed out of the room before opening it because my imagination was going wild at this point. Brenda was still refusing to come in, so I brought the box out to the dining room. We opened it together and found dozens of old Polaroid photos. Most were normal family pics, kids playing, holiday gatherings, etc. But mixed in were these strange photos of the same kids sleeping, like someone had gone into their rooms at night and taken pictures of them. There was also a journal at the bottom of the box. The entries were dated from 1953, 1972, and were all written by someone named Danny. At first, they were normal entries about family life, but then they started getting strange. Danny wrote about checking on the children every night and making sure they were still breathing. There were detailed notes about their sleeping positions, when they turned over, if they talked in their sleep. I freaked out and called the real estate agent. She had no idea about any secret room and seemed genuinely shocked. She called the previous owners, but they didn't answer. 2 days later, I got a handwritten letter from Caroline, the previous owner. She apologized for not telling me about the room and explained that it was built by her father-in-law, Danny, who had lived with them until he died in the 90s. Apparently, Danny had lost a child to SIDS in the early 1950s before Timothy was born. After that, he became obsessed with making sure his remaining children were safe at night. He built the hidden room so he could check on the kids without disturbing them. As the years went on, his anxiety never improved. He kept the same routine with his grandchildren when they visited. The room had been sealed up after Danny died, but Timothy and Caroline never had the heart to remove it completely. Caroline wrote that she should have told me but was embarrassed about the